Thanks to the ingenuity of a Swiss weapons manufacturer and the generosity of its Western partners, Ukraine now has at its disposal a big gun that it can use to take out some of Russia's most dangerous aerial threats. And when we say big gun, we really mean it. Ukraine's newest weapon is a massive revolver that's purpose-built to shoot drones and rockets out of the skies. Now it's arrived and Ukraine is preparing to deploy it so that Russian President Vladimir Putin's aerial assaults become less effective than ever before. What is that big gun? The Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3, and it's a gun that packs a massive punch that Ukraine intends to aim right at Russia's aerial jawline. So what do we know about this massive revolver and how is Ukraine going to use it to tackle Russia's aerial might? We explore the answers to those and more questions in this video, starting with when the initial deployment took place. On October 30th, 2024, an X account named 2S7Pion shared footage of a camouflaged Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 that appeared to be located at a Ukrainian training site. The account claimed that the gun was being fired with airburst ammunition and tungsten submunitions. The video shows the aerial defense system firing, with the training revolving around shooting drones out of the skies. This was the first hint we received of the latest evolution of Ukraine's aerial defenses. Later, it was revealed that the gun, and several others like it, had arrived in Ukraine courtesy of the German weapons manufacturer Rheinmetall. More specifically, it had arrived via Oerlikon, one of the manufacturer's Swiss subsidiaries, and a group that specializes in crafting aerial defense systems. Rheinmetall is a name you'll likely recognize if you've been keeping up with the military aid that's flowed into Ukraine from the West. The company proudly proclaims itself to be a powerful partner at Ukraine's side, and it's proven that by providing many of the weapons its Western customers went on to donate to Ukraine. Ukrainian soldiers can regularly be seen driving Rheinmetall's Marder infantry fighting vehicles around the battlefield, with the company having delivered around 200 of those vehicles since March 2023. Rheinmetall also signed a memorandum of understanding with Ukraine's Minister for Strategic Industries, Oleksandr Kamyshin, during the Ukraine Recovery Conference 2024 in Berlin, in which it committed to identifying further opportunities for cooperation between it and Ukraine. Such opportunities for cooperation include the manufacturing of artillery ammunition for Ukraine and the provision of Lynx infantry fighting vehicles to go alongside the Marders that Ukraine has already received. On the ammunition front, Rheinmetall supplies the 20mm ammo that the Marder vehicle uses, along with 40mm, 105mm, and 120mm tank ammunition. Add 155mm artillery ammunition and the Skynex air defense system to that mix, and you get a heady combination of weaponry that showcases just how important Rheinmetall is to Ukraine's defensive efforts. February 2024 alone saw Rheinmetall commit to producing a 6-digit number of 155mm rounds per year for Ukraine, showing that Ukraine's opposition to Russia is deeply intertwined with the German weapon manufacturer's capabilities. And now Rheinmetall has taken that spirit of cooperation a step further by providing Ukraine with the Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3. Army Recognition provided more details about Ukraine's first deployment of the Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 in a report on October 31st. The aforementioned 2S7Pion X account says the delivery of this weapon system, along with others like it, is a direct result of a series of bilateral agreements Ukraine has signed with weapons manufacturers like Rheinmetall to bolster its aerial defenses. These agreements led to the first high-precision air defense equipment arriving in Ukraine during the early stages of Putin's special military operation. The arrival of the Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 is a major step forward from those early days. It marks Ukraine moving into a new phase of defensive reinforcement, claims Army Recognition, one in which Ukraine is going to do all that it can to integrate more autonomous technology and smart munitions into its anti-air strategy. Army Recognition also notes that nobody knows how many of these massive revolver guns Ukraine has yet received, but the evidence being posted to X means that it's definitely received at least one. Right now, Ukraine is training with that gun. Soon, it'll be capable of deploying it to the field. But why is that so important to Ukraine? Just what does the Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 offer that makes it such a terrifying addition to the country's aerial defense lineup? To answer that question, we need to dig down into the weapon's specifications. Rheinmetall's product guide gives us the basic details. It calls the Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 a remote-controlled and high-precision 35mm air defense gun. It's able to use a combination of radar tracking and electro-optical sensors to detect inbound aerial threats and shoot them out of the sky. On top of that, the gun can be integrated with other search radars and any higher-order control systems Ukraine has in place, allowing it to process both 2D and 3D targeting data that those external sensors capture. In other words, the powerful radars built into the Oerlikon revolver can be supplemented with external imagery pulled from other radars, so it's able to automatically track incoming drones and rockets. Note the use of the word automatically there. Though Oerlikon's massive revolver can be remote-controlled, it's almost entirely autonomous in terms of how it tracks and engages aerial targets. Its internal tracking radar uses an automatic search pattern for target handover, with the integrated gun control computer handling engagement of the incoming threat from there. Manual targeting is also available via the remote-controlled gun console mentioned earlier, with each of these consoles being capable of managing up to 8 of the massive revolvers. In short, Ukraine gets to equip one person with 8 massive guns to blow drones and rockets out of the skies. The technical specs get even more impressive from there. Despite the word revolver conjuring images of 6-shooter firearms, the Oerlikon revolver can rattle off an astonishing 1,000 rounds of 35mm by 228 ammo per minute per its nominal rate of fire. However, it typically fires around 200 rounds per minute when set to its rapid single-shot mode, still more than enough to take out multiple incoming targets. Each of those rounds fires out of the gun's barrel at a ridiculously fast 2,404 miles per hour, which means that they move at Mach 3 toward their target. The revolver is capable of rotating 360 degrees, allowing it to track and engage targets regardless of which direction they're coming from, and it has a massive effective combat range. Each of its rounds can travel for 13,123 feet, allowing the gun to easily take out drones and rockets long before they reach their intended targets. Perhaps best of all for the Ukrainian soldiers who aren't yet familiar with the weapon system, it requires no field alignment. That means no messing around trying to align the Oerlikon revolver's barrel to ensure it's pointing in the right direction. The massive gun's tracking systems handle all of that automatically. Make no mistake about it, the Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 is a very impressive aerial defense system. But it's not the gun alone that makes the weapon so terrifying. The rounds it fires are also extremely special. The gun typically fires Rheinmetall's Oerlikon Ahead airburst ammunition. Each round of this ammunition comes loaded with a programmable time fuse that causes the round to detonate just before it reaches its target. Why would Ukraine want to do that? Because an Oerlikon Ahead round is packed with a tungsten subprojectile payload, through which the round unleashes multiple powerful projectiles over a large radius. The initial round explodes, and the subprojectiles essentially create a hail of bullets through which a drone or rocket has to navigate. Think about what that means for any incoming threat. A single 35mm round would be dangerous enough should it happen to hit a drone or small missile. But Russia could counteract these individual rounds by sending dozens of drones and rockets. Even if several were shot down thanks to direct hits, many would make it through to their targets. That's far less likely to happen when the Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 is guarding a target. The gun can rattle off dozens of rounds within seconds, with each of those rounds exploding into a flurry of projectiles concentrated over the area through which the aerial threat is coming. It's blanket strategy versus blanket strategy. If Russia is going to blanket the Ukrainian skies with dozens of drones and rockets, the Oerlikon revolver firing Ahead rounds can fill those same skies with hundreds of explosive projectiles in response. The Ahead rounds will come out on top more often than not in those situations. The Ahead principle makes sure of that. Each one of the submunitions an exploded round deploys combines the use of high kinetic energy, remember that an Ahead round reaches speeds of up to Mach 3 once fired, with optimized shape and hardness. The latter two factors ensure the rounds can easily penetrate through the flimsy hulls of most drones, as well as force their way through the strong metal casings surrounding most short-range rockets and missiles. Steel, aluminium, and composite structures all fall victim to the Ahead round's subprojectiles. Rheinmetall and its Swiss subsidiary have also been very clever in terms of how they ensure total saturation of the subprojectiles. When an Ahead round explodes, it releases its subprojectiles in what the manufacturer calls a defined cone. That cone ensures that none of the subprojectiles fly off course, ensuring that each Ahead round achieves verifiable and repeatable saturation levels that ensure it can hit and kill targets predictably. That's a massive boon for Ukraine. Unpredictable weapons allow drones and rockets to sneak through while ruining strategies. The Oerlikon revolver and its ammunition offering consistent performance with every round fired ensures each deployment results in Russia's aerial attacks being minimized as effectively as possible. The rounds can even be tuned depending on the target. Ukraine can tweak the payload and ejection distance of an Ahead round's subprojectiles once it's chosen a payload configuration, so the cone is as wide or as narrow as needed for the incoming threat. All of this may sound like the Ahead round is a complex little beast. Could that cause problems for Ukraine in terms of maintaining and properly firing the rounds? Not at all. Despite the unique and extremely innovative way an ahead round works, it's also remarkably mechanically simple. Each round has numerous safety features to ensure it doesn't explode early. Rheinmetall calls ahead inherently safe, while noting that each round has a low explosive content of less than 0.035 ounces. An ahead round also doesn't require a chemical battery, and that lack of a chemical component means that it also doesn't need any sort of specialist storage conditions. Ukraine can treat an ahead round just like any other bullet its soldiers might load into their guns, only this particular bullet can shower incoming drones and rockets with a hail of projectiles that can take them out of the skies. Make no mistake about it, the Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 is terrifying. But it's the ahead rounds it's capable of firing that make it such a dangerous proposition for Russia to handle. And that brings us to the next question we need to ask in this video. How is Ukraine going to use its new Oerlikon revolvers? We have some hints from the images and videos the various ex-users who captured the massive gun in action shared on social media. Those training exercises saw Ukrainian soldiers using the Oerlikon revolver to shoot drones out of the skies. That's going to be massive, because Putin's special military operation has given us a strange juxtaposition in terms of how modern warfare is carried out. On one hand, Putin's meat grinder strategies on the ground are so antiquated that they appear to have been pulled right out of a World War II textbook. Trenches line the Ukrainian landscape, tanks are used to attack fortifications, and Putin sends wave after wave of his soldiers as cannon fodder for Ukrainian bullets. That's been the case since the beginning of the war. They fight like stupid animals, claimed a Ukrainian medic with the call sign of Reaper in March 2022. They fight like it's 1941. They have no maneuverability. They just come to the front and that's all. They have a lot of people, a lot of tanks, a lot of vehicles. Not a whole lot has changed in the 2.5 years since those comments were made. Putin is still churning up his own soldiers in a meat grinder on the ground. But on the other hand, Russia's approach to the aerial battle has been much more modern. Following its faltering early aerial assaults that saw it lose around 300 aircraft in the skies of Ukraine, it relied on modern drones to carry out its attacks on Ukrainian positions. A lot of drones. Since the beginning of Putin's special military operation, Russia has sent at least 8,060 Shahid drones it received from Iran to Ukraine. That's on top of the many hundreds of drones it will have built itself and drones received from other countries. Russia uses these drones for an array of purposes. Some have bombs strapped to them, allowing them to function as unmanned kamikaze vehicles, such as in a wave of strikes Russia conducted on Ukrainian cities that left at least 31 people dead in December 2023. Russia is also believed to be using drones to hunt for civilians. In October 2024, the BBC told the story of a Ukrainian hardware trader named Serhiy Dobrovolsky returning to his home after a hard day at work. Serhiy lit a cigarette and started a chat with his next-door neighbor. Both heard the ominous sound of a drone flying overhead. Before Serhiy knew what was happening, the drone had dropped a grenade into his yard, killing him thanks to a piece of shrapnel that pierced his heart. Ukraine recorded 5,000 drone attacks between July and late October 2024, with those attacks having killed 30 civilians and injured 400 more. So it's not just kamikaze drones Ukraine has to worry about. It's drones carrying grenades and unmanned aerial vehicles being used to surveil its citizens against which it needs to defend its people. Other drone attacks, such as those that The Guardian reported on November 26th, target Ukrainian energy and logistical infrastructure. In the case of the November attack, Russia sent 188 drones to take out power stations and attack residential buildings. For all of his failures in his ground approach, Putin has done almost as good a job as Ukraine at using drones to gain advantages. The Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 and its ahead rounds are Ukraine's new counter to these constant drone strikes. Granted, we don't know how many Oerlikon revolvers Ukraine has received, and it's certainly not enough to cover every potential Russian drone target. But these guns can be installed at key military facilities to cut a swathe through Russia's dozen-strong drone assaults, minimizing the damage they're capable of causing. That's a massive loss for Putin, as he's relying on his drones to cause serious damage to Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. The Shahid 136 drones he's getting from Iran, for instance, have a top speed of around 115 miles per hour, nowhere near fast enough for it to get past an ahead round traveling at Mach 3. But even more terrifying for Russia's leader is that the Oerlikon revolver is just as effective against rockets and small missiles as it is against drones. Russia often accompanies its drone strikes with rocket and missile assaults. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS, Russia fired 11,466 missiles at Ukraine between September 2022 and September 2024. We can assume the real number has far exceeded 12,000. when taking the months those figures don't cover into account. CSIS says that 11,466 figure amounts to 23.2 missiles being launched at Ukraine daily, though the true daily number fluctuates. Some days Russia fires no missiles at all. On others, the missile count has climbed higher than 82 in a single day. Still, the point is that Russia loves to saturate Ukrainian positions with missile attacks in the hope of damaging cities and infrastructure, just as it does with drones. Russia already has a low success rate with its missiles. CSIS says that Ukraine's daily intercept rate averages out to 83.5%. That means of the 11,466 missiles Russia launched in the 2 tracked years, only 1,892 or so managed to touch down on their targets. The others were intercepted by aerial defense systems Ukraine already had in place. With the addition of the Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 to its arsenal, Ukraine will expect to take out many more of these missiles and rockets. Take the strikes against Ukrainian power grids in later November 2024, which Al Jazeera reported on November 28th. Vladimir Putin says that Russia launched 100 drones and 90 missiles during that strike. Ukraine says it was more like 91 missiles and 97 drones, and it managed to shoot down 79 of the former and 35 of the latter. Having the Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 in the field would bump those intercept numbers up considerably because the system is purpose-built to take out the types of small aerial threats Putin uses in great numbers to attack Ukrainian positions. In short, whether it's drones or rockets, the Oerlikon Revolver can take them out. And in doing so, it offers far greater protection to key Ukrainian assets than existed previously. Putin will be horrified by all of this. He'll hate receiving the news that Ukraine has a new weapon that can help it combat the modern aerial tactics he's used to support his antiquated ground-based strategies. But perhaps most worrying of all for Russia's president is what the arrival of the Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 in Ukraine means in terms of his enemy's anti-air strategy and its defense partnerships. Both are evolving. In terms of physical defensive capabilities, Ukraine is getting better and better in terms of the weapons it has at its disposal to take out Russian munitions. The Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 is perfect for installing at locations that are at risk of drone, rocket, and missile attacks. It stacks well alongside the Patriot surface-to-air missile system, which Ukraine can use to take out threats that the Oerlikon Revolver's ahead rounds can't penetrate. Closer to the front lines, the Skynex air defense systems that Ukraine has received, also made by Swiss company Oerlikon and manufactured by Rheinmetall, deliver tactical air defense capabilities. Those platforms can target drones, choppers, and guided missiles that Putin directs at Ukrainian positions on the front lines. And don't forget about Ukraine's F-16s. Ukraine already offered us some hints of how it'll use its first batch of 6 it received from its European allies when it used them to intercept missiles Russia fired in an August 2024 attack. Ukraine is expected to receive around 40 to 50 more of these fighter jets in 2025, giving it more options for defense and the ability to create pockets of air superiority for its troops on the ground. Through this, we can track the evolution the country has undergone from relying on its Soviet-era anti-air weapons and fighter jets to the far more modern systems it has now. The Oerlikon Revolver is just another stage of this evolution, one that gives Ukraine more defensive options than Putin ever thought it would have. The other aspect of Ukraine's aerial defense evolution is one we touched upon earlier. It's developing ties with other countries and their arms industries. We've already seen that with the agreements Ukraine has formed with Rheinmetall for artillery shells and ongoing defense cooperation. Naturally, that means that Ukraine has also built closer ties with Rheinmetall's subsidiaries, such as Oerlikon, which is what's giving it access to powerful aerial defense systems like the Oerlikon Revolver in the first place. Take a wider look. Ukraine's receipt of the Oerlikon Revolver is also more evidence of the powerful defensive ties it's built with Germany since the beginning of Putin's special military operation. Germany is committed to supporting Ukraine for as long as it takes to win the war, and it's also committed billions of dollars, a little over $39 billion as of November 2024. By facilitating the receipt of the Swiss-made Oerlikon Revolver through Rheinmetall, Germany is only strengthening its allegiance with Ukraine. Berlin also supports Ukraine with training. Such has been the case with almost every weapon system Rheinmetall has delivered to Ukraine so far, and we'd be willing to bet that Germany had a not insubstantial part to play in the training we see in the early footage of the Oerlikon Revolver's deployment in Ukraine. The Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 isn't just a terrifying new weapon Ukraine could deploy against Russia's drones and missiles. It's a symbol, a physical representation of the strengthening bonds between Ukraine and its allies in the wake of Putin's relentless aerial assaults. And that strengthening will scare Putin on an entirely new level once Ukraine starts using the Oerlikon Revolver to take out more of his drones and missiles. But what do you think about the arrival of the Oerlikon Revolver Gun Mk3 in Ukraine? Will this Swiss-made and German-delivered weapon live up to the hype as a drone and missile buster? Or will Russia find ways to continue its aerial assaults, even with the giant revolver in play? Share your thoughts in the comments, and thank you as always for watching the video. Now go and check out Australia. just gave Russia another devastating blow. Or click this other video instead.